CMON, and the Masters of the Universe.
Hey, it's Chase from On the Table Gaming, and today we're joined by CMON's Michael Shinall and Leo Almeida, the game designers on the most powerful game in the universe, CMON's Master of the Universe Clash for Eternia board game. And thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, good to be back on, Chase.
So you guys must be thrilled about the success of the Kickstarter, already over $1 million, and there are 4 days to go. So I can't wait to see what's in store. But today, let's talk about some of the things that we've seen so far. And I think the biggest takeaway for me personally has been that all of the characters that I grew up and loved actually have real names. So that's been somewhat terrifying. And there are great names like, is it like Clefton or Bo from the She-Ra expansion? His name is just Kyle. I feel like I was lied to as a kid.
Good old man Kyle.
Yeah, I mean, just go by Kyle. Like, what is going on here?
We're using our superhero names.
Do you have any personal favorite character names, or does anything come to mind?
Well, I like the idea of Kyle. Kyle is usually the kid that drinks Monster, right? And he breaks the stereotype, so that's nice.
My favorite is Clawful because it's a series of indiscriminate clacking noises.
Or Buzz Off, which is just bee noises also.
You know, that makes sense. So, you know, they got some cool names. Sometimes, yes, they are ridiculous. So if you were transformed into Master of the Universe characters or, you know, original characters here, what would your names be? Would you keep the same name or would you have a cool name? And is it horrible to have you come up with the names for each other? Is that
okay? For myself, I would go as Kyle. I like Kyle.
It's just Kyle. Real name, just Kyle. Yeah. How about you, Michael?
Barnaby Jones.
Barnaby Jones, aka Michael Shinall.
But for Michael,
oh, Leo, you got a better one. What do you got? This was the last time he was seen as a CMON employee.
It's hard. Do you know one for me, Michael?
I would just call you Sport.
Okay,
that's the very first thing that came to my mind. So
I know a perfect one for you, Fuzzy Bear.
Fuzzy Bear. Okay, all right. There must be a story behind that, but all right, we got the cool names. There's a lot of cool things to talk about here with this Kickstarter, and so you have a ton of awesome expansions. The Assault on Castle Grayskull. You got She-Ra and the Great Rebellion. We've got the Wrath of Snake Mountain. Out of those three, is there one that you are particularly excited about? Like, which one of those might be a personal favorite? Leo, maybe starting with you.
Well, if I didn't say Castle of Grayskull, it wouldn't be. I would be lying. It has a castle, man. It's unbeatable, really. I don't think there's any other option.
Plus, you're narrowing it down. The choice is left over for Michael. So clever pick.
Yeah.
What about it? You know, so I never actually had the full Castle Grayskull as a kid. So that just looks awesome to me, especially like the plastic Grayskull. Is there anything particular about that set that you are really excited about?
Well, I guess the most flashing part is the castle miniature, which is awesome. Also, the content of the expansion is the one that changes the most. We have a new game mode, new features, mechanics that you can play in the game to get to your objective, and I think that's it makes, for me at least, the most exciting one.
Yeah, I think that looks awesome, like little set pieces. One thing I was kind of confused about is it references that the expansion comes with like additional gear. Is the gear like that's like the ladder and the mounted gun stuff? Oh, that's awesome.
Exactly that.
Michael, how about you? Which of the expansions are you most excited for?
You know, I really kind of hate defaulting to this answer, but I have to say, like, they're kind of all tied for me for different reasons. And I don't want to be like, oh, you know, I like them all. You know, I hate being one of those designers that's, you know, oh, I like all my children equally, because everyone has a favorite in all aspects of life. But in this specific regard, I thought that the She-Ra one was going to be the bottom of my list because wasn't a huge fan of She-Ra, and the new She-Ra show has just like so much kind of hype behind it that it just kind of sours it to me, because like you hear like everyone like, oh my God, you have to go and watch this. It's amazing. It's like, I don't have time.
Michael is a hipster.
I am one of those hipsters that like, oh, it's popular. No, thank you. But honestly, when we started doing the characters and like the designs of them and everything, they were so fun and like kind of kooky that they really grew on me. So they kind of hit that underdog status of like, I didn't think I was going to like them. And then I ended up liking them. And then we had the Snake Men, which I didn't know anything about going into this whole project. And then I learned there's a whole faction of Snake Men. I was like, well, these guys are cool. And then like, it's an army of Snake Men. So, I mean, you know, how can you not like that? Now, okay, mechanically, they're probably, I say they're my least favorite, but that still doesn't mean they're bad or anything. It's just that they are all snakemen, so they kind of go similar. Versus like all the princesses of power and whatnot, all have super distinct abilities. And then you come across, Grayskull, which is, that was our chance to really make something special there, of just going all out, making an entire different game mode and everything to play. So mechanically, that one is, I'll agree with Leo, like my favorite one. But again, I like the She-Ra one for being an underdog, and the Snakeman one is kind of like the most well-rounded one, just because it's a bunch of cool sculpts, cool characters, and cool themes.
Well, I don't have a favorite kid. I really like Grayskull. Okay,
he's changing his answer now. What?
No. I keep my answer. I'm just saying is Grayskull only. The main thing is the new mechanic and the whole castle thing. But I really like. I have like personal stories with like researching to make all the characters from any box, so they really click with me. So
your research here. So I heard on one of the streams that talk about how you were a champion of some of these heroes, Leo, that you were like out there leading the charge on getting some of the coolest characters, especially from my childhood. I mean, so can you talk a little bit about our maybe Rock-On, that sort of Stonedar situation there?
Yeah, so there was this time where I was researching about like Heman trivia, but for Stonedar to make his abilities, and then I came across to see that Stonedar and Rock-On were really like close, and that they just were inseparable in the medias. And when that was brought up to my attention by one of our testers.
Yeah, so they're inseparable, and there was a tyrant or some sort of dark malevolent force that wanted to tear this family apart, right?
When I first brought it up to Michael, he said, "Don't bother."
What?
For what? No, I'm kidding. I'm being like not fair with Michael here. Yeah, but we researched it to make sure it was a good addition, and but I brought it up. But I guess that was the only one that happened. The Rock-On, the rest of most of the characters we already like included almost every character there is. But yeah, Rock-On had that story.
I do want to interject there just a second, because like
correct the record a little bit.
Well, just to get some clarification there, because on the topic of characters, so there were a lot of characters that we wanted to include everyone that we could, but there were some that we could not include for various reasons. And it's real easy to just throw it down and go like, oh, well, due to licensing, we couldn't include blah, blah, blah. And that was the case with a lot of characters, a lot of the Princess of Power ones and the She-Ra ones, because the rights for all those are spread across everywhere. There were a couple other characters, which I don't know when this is going to air. So the Kickstarter might be done by then. It might be its final days, but I'm not going to give any spoilers here or whatnot to mention any specifics. But there were some characters, and sadly, they are some of the more requested ones that I know we're not going to be able to include for various reasons. And of course, I can't get into the specifics of those reasons, just for, again, professional reasons, courtesies, and things like that. But just rest assured that, if we could, we included as many as we possibly could, to the point where at times, we were going through our approvals process, it was like members of our internal staff and everything, we would go like, hey, we want to add some more characters here to make sure we're covering more bases. And they would go like, really? Do we have to do this? Can you just stop, please? And so that's kind of what came up with like Rock-On and Stonedar was, when we made our initial character list and everything, it was like, okay, listen, we only really need like one big rock guy. And, it's like, okay, that's going to cover our bases. Yes, people will ask for the pair and everything, but, we got to keep timetables. We got to keep approvals processes going here, because all this stuff takes a huge amount of time. But Leo was fairly adamant about this one above all the others.
Basically, what he's saying is, he said, don't bother.
How dare you, sir? No. Well, he said, because they rock, right? I mean, we can say that. It's obvious.
Yes, we can say that they are the Ayatollahs of rock and roll, whatever. Because this is basically just at the time during this project's the project timetable. This had just come off of a back and forth that we had where some what I would consider kind of key characters we were told that we could not use, or that they were going to be very difficult to attain. Again, for those various reasons I really can't get into. So that was like, oh man, like we just had this like kind of serious back and forth, and now we're going to go through and bring up, Stonedar and Rock On of all things. Okay, sure.
He said, "You're not worthy."
Wow. Yeah, I like how Leo, you keep trying to throw like stuff on the fire here, and Mike has to be like, okay, let me just clarify.
I'm like that.
Is it safe to say that like every character that you could get in legally, you went for? Like it was oftentimes that things are restricted based on these outside forces, not on like personal decisions by the designers?
Oh,
Yes.
absolutely. If there was something that like people thought should be included but wasn't, and it's at least a semi-major character, you can kind of assume that the reason for that was something got in the way of it. Now, of course, there's things like the metabots and everything. Like, no, we had no intention to ever include those guys, nor were we going to.
Or did we?
Yes, or did we, depending on when this is released or not. But but yeah, so like just saying that, like, basically if someone like watches this, like, I don't know, in the future and was like, during the Kickstarter, my favorite character of X, Y, or Z was never, out there, and I know they were popular, assume that wasn't a personal choice, there was a reason they weren't included, because we wanted to include as much things as we possibly could, because everyone has their fans out there. Like we've joked about in previous episodes, even Ram Man, somehow has a loyal legion of fans out there.
Yeah,
he's got a fan.
There's some ones I just kept being reminded of, like stuff that I was like, oh yeah, like I love that, and like I kind of had forgotten about it, and then just like that nostalgia hit like over and over and over again. Even some of the stuff that I was like, oh yeah, like Stridor, and you had the Stridor and Fisto, and like I didn't really know Stridor from the comics. I remember him from the show. And, Man at Arms just made a sentient horse one day as like a subplot in an episode. And like everyone was okay with that. When it's like, wait, what? No one's going to answer the question about that? Like, okay.
If Man at Arms appear playing God, making sentient life, and Stridor and Roboto and all that, and just whatever.
Yeah, it's like he just like invented like Skynet, like a horse version, and everyone's okay. It's gonna be like the Matrix, right? It's the architect. Yeah. It's gonna be harvesting people for batteries or something. Who has the power now? Yeah, so it was fun to see all those individual pieces come together and just be reminded, a trip down memory lane, like with each update that's been coming out. Plus some like variants. The laser light Skeletor and the Terror Claw Skeletor, like those just look awesome.
You have your whole team of Skeletors.
Is it possible to play with multiple variants of the same character?
So we do have like the all-out mode, which you can just pick whatever you want freely from it. There's technically no reason you couldn't play with multiple Skeletor, aside from just like, I can't even say a lore appropriate reason in that case, because Skeletor clones were a thing.
Yeah.
But the thing is, what we did about those variants is that mechanically, we didn't want them to be the same characters. I mean, they play as a different character. There might be some cases where they do share some skills, because some things are like iconic to the characters, but honestly, Laser Light Skeletor plays different from Terror Claw Skeletor, plays different from Korvac Skeletor. Like you can view these as just different characters, or the Skeletor triplets to play them.
That's a horrifying enemy squad. It's the Skeletor triplets. Here we go.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, the good old Skeletor triplets.
For me, actually, one of the ones that stood out was even just the alternate He-Man with the battle axe. That sculpt looks so cool. When I was a kid, for some reason, I just remember having that axe and just thinking it was cooler than the sword. Maybe it's because like the sword was like half a sword, but I just thought the axe was so cool. So seeing that sculpt with it, I'm like, well, I know which miniature I'm going to use for him. Like that one right there. So as far as characters go, do you have like a dream team? Like if you had to pick your squad, Leo, like who would you pull together?
Well, if it was the heroic warriors, definitely Roboto, Mossman. I really like Orko, and I guess we're missing
nobody from the Great Rebellion. No one from the She-Ra side of things.
Good idea. I'm gonna get my wife Perfuma.
Perfuma. Oh, okay, interesting. I was always more of like I love like ice powers in games, and so Frosta I think is more my speed. But the big qualifiers in the I know it's based on the toy line, but in the TV series, she was like kind of like creepily infatuated with He-Man, like in a really uncomfortable way.
Well, what can you say? He's the most powerful man in the world.
The world, no, the universe, sir. Michael, what might be your dream team?
So I've actually made some like example teams during the Kickstarter when we had similar discussions, but mine kind of starts with She-Ra, because I just really like her toolkit that she has, like the healing and protection, like that whole paladin aesthetic. I really like that that set of skills appeals to me. So I start with her as like the foundational like rock of my team. And then like, okay, looking to like the core box, like heroic warriors in there, it's really hard. It's really hard not to just go like She-Ra, He-Man, because that like, that 1-2 like tag team punch right there of just like the self like resourceful healing guys. That gives you like your really solid bit of frontline fighters. And She-Ra is, her sword of power is just straight up better than He-Man's, like in the canon, the lore, because He-Man has a sword. Okay, She-Ra's sword of protection can transform into a lasso, can transform into a shield, whatever she needs it to be. So it's just infinitely more useful than the sword of power, because she can actually use it.
Another thing nobody questioned back in the day, we were like, wait, they can just do anything? Like, yep, the sentient horse and this sword can be anything that's useful. It's like, oh, that's really good.
So, okay, She-Ra, He-Man. I'm gonna go with Fisto on that case, just because I want to. This
surprise.
Well, so the thing is, like, okay, yes, I've been dressing as Fisto for like the live stream and everything, but that's just because it was the easiest one to do, and I was able to order a shirt off Amazon and make it work, and then cover my hand in tinfoil. It was minimal effort.
You just do that for the live stream? I thought you were like walking around like that. I thought this was your new persona.
Oh no, Chase. But so I got my really.
I wish it would be nice.
So we have our strong like frontline team right there with those three. And I guess to bring up the support right there, it's very tempting for me to just go man at arms, just to go with his support role of like tactical repositioning and give you some like support fire.
Oh yeah.
So that's kind of what comes to my mind is like, I'm just going to go forward and just like, we're going to punch everything to death and throw everything and not use our weapons as swords, because we're very nonviolent.
Like you do. Oh man, those are both very compelling. I'm surprised you both went with the heroic warriors, both went good guys. So
I just wanted to buck the trends. I knew you were expecting me to go evil warriors. And I didn't want to say
I was. I gotta say I was.
And I didn't want to say Roboto because I think we're all like universally like in agreement that like that's just the coolest character.
That does seem like a cool character. The way the power works with that.
It's just he's a cool robot guy. I mean, like that just ticks like every cool box for me. And again, Leo primarily did the design on Roboto there of like making his ability to just auto hit dice and everything, and that's really cool. Again, scared me when I first saw it, but it grew on me. So props there.
Thanks.
Speaking of like robots and AI, I know you already did like an update and you've talked actually about it at some length. Can we talk a little bit more about the AI modes that come with the game? So for example, like with the expansion boxes, are they all AI friendly?
Yes, everything is playable in AI. There's not a single thing that you won't be able to play in AI. There are specific things that are made for AI, which will increase your experience. It will be a better one compared to other scenarios, but everything is playable with AI, so also solo mode. Yes.
Yeah. So like every character in all the expansions, every single character in the game has an AI card. So even if you're playing just core box AI scenarios, you can include the Snakeman guys if you want or whatever. And with Grayskull, we initially weren't going to have an AI mode just because when we were initially testing it, it was a little exploitable. And, that's just one of those things that you don't want. So I'd rather not include a system rather than have one that people view as like half-assed. So, but then we played around with it. And so far we've gotten like the defender like mode to work where it does play like a tower defense game. You're the defender, you got to hold out X number of rounds while basically you have like the enemies that are just coming in bigger waves. That worked out pretty well. And that really wasn't that hard to get down to being playable. Now, flipping that around and putting you on the offense, that's something we still haven't really worked out super well here, because while the mode is functional, it's exploitable because the AI is it can only be so smart.
Right.
It's one of those things like, if you ask the players like, okay, well, don't play to your fullest. Well, what's the point?
Right.
And that's really what comes down to the other scenarios as well, is that, we've crafted specific AI scenarios to work off of the AI deck and solo play and whatnot. The majority of the other scenarios, well, I won't say the majority because that's going to sound more than we intend. Many of the other scenarios can function in AI, but they're not designed specifically to be AI.
Okay.
Basically, it's like that's to put a little caveat there. It's like, yeah, a lot of them will work, but sometimes they might break or be a little exploitable. Like an example in the core box, you have the brawl scenario, which is basically your excuse of a scenario if you just don't want to fight each other. It's the most basic of the basic. That one, AI is going to work just fine for that one because it's just based around moving forward and trying to KO enemies. Okay, the AI does that primarily anyway. But then if you take another scenario like the Relic, where you're secretly assigning a objective to one of your characters and having to get them across the map. Well, the AI is not really going to be able to do that too well because there's too many variables in that scenario.
Right.
You have another one like the buried treasures one where you're moving across the board and trying to collect different objectives. That one kind of works pretty well because the AI can be the controller in that situation. And okay, it basically is going to do what the controller would normally want to do. There's very little hidden information that they're trying to accomplish, but it wouldn't work for the players in that case. And then you have other scenarios like the Marlena one that we've shown. And yeah, we can talk about other scenarios. And Leo, I guess we can do this other scenarios that we haven't shown to the the reviewers and everything. But like the Marlena one, that's not going to function super well for AI just because if something goes wrong, like there has to be some smart player decisions that happen in situations. Otherwise, the AI is just going to kind of blindly, dumbly move forward. Basically, think of like any video game where it's like an escort quest.
Yeah.
Think of how good the AI usually is in escort quests. There's a reason why those are usually viewed as the worst type of quest in most games. And that's the whole thing with like this AI. We don't want to just throw it out there and say like, oh yeah, it kind of works, so we're crafting specific scenarios for it, but you can try it with a lot of the other ones, but we're not going to go our way and recommend it and say like, oh yeah, they all function like that, because that's not true. Some of them are going to work better than others if you go outside that means of, trying to force it.
So you revealed that there were, like 3 cards, right? It was attack and advance, activate skill, and then reckless onslaught. And these were 3 examples of AI cards from their deck. And in that way it was worded in that update, it talked about common cards and rare cards. And I didn't know if that's like an actual distinction, but is there like how many cards are in that AI deck? And when you say like common and rare, what does that? Does that mean there's like 4 attack and advance and like 4 activate skills and then like 2 reckless onslaughts and then like that's your deck? Or is it like more developed? What does that look like?
The number of each card is different. There are some like attack and advance, which are more simple, which are more, they have more quantity over the others in the deck. Which was made like that in order for you to expect something. Of course, there are some cards that only have 1 copy or less than that's still subject to change, okay? But okay.
Right, and anything we talk about here, right, is still subject to change.
Yeah, but the AI will have what Michael meant with the rarities is that the amount of copies that we'll have in the deck will be different.
And that's mainly there to like disperse things out because you reshuffle that deck every round. The AI has 4 activations because it has 3 characters in the controller one. So for each of the characters, you'll be flipping 1 card. So you're going to be seeing 3 of those cards every round. But, you want them to have like basically some form of, okay, I can kind of predict like majority of the time they're going to do this or this, and sometimes they'll pop out that like surprise, like, oh, he's doing his super powerful attack or he's getting all these buffs here, to throw that little bit of variety in there, because there were a couple of methods we could have gone with the AI where like one was every character just had their programmed AI. That would allow the game to be kind of more like a puzzle mode where it's like, okay, I know all the variables, they're in front of me. I know what every character is going to do. Like Beastman, he's always going to advance and attack. He's always going to do this. But by having an AI deck of cards, you can kind of throw those unexpected moments into the game. It's like, okay, majority of the time, I know that the character is going to move forward and he's going to try to attack me because frankly, that's 70% of what you're going to be doing in the base game anyway.
Right.
While you're attempting to play the scenario. But then like there's that 30% of the time, that something unexpected is going to happen. So like I'm planning for like Beastman to like, he's going to move forward and attack me, but then I'll flip, an AI card that goes like, oh, surprise. He's actually going to gain a surge of power and do something else instead that was unexpected here. And so that's the thing about the AI deck is that it's a deck of generic behaviors for the AI to do, whereas most of the individual flavor and combinations are going to come from the attack and the skill on each of the characters. But then you're like, I don't want to go too much into this because we've covered this once in an article and there's so much to cover here in general, but just even talk about the raw number of variables. I'm just going to shotgun this out right here. Variables. You've got the 3 different controller characters that you chose. Each of them has a different attack. Each of them has a different ability. They're going to change the dynamics of how you're going to play. You have the controller deck that's going to activate its controller abilities, which in there you got a baseline of 5 effects representing the most of the controller powers. You have the variable activation order every single round that's going to happen. So, sometimes you'll have characters that double up on their activation, depending on, how they're going to go in the round. So these are things that you have to plan for as a player, and there's still those unknown things that are going to come into play. So, and that creates the dynamics there because you're playing against an AI. You need to have those kind of cinematic moments here, that can sometimes even the best laid plans, something bad happened. Like I didn't expect this to happen. And those little moments that are going to create that tension in the game.
That sounds fantastic. And just just to reiterate, every character that you get in the Kickstarter and in the core box and the expansions can be played in AI as well. Everything has that flip side. So that's a lot of variables just in itself.
Yes. Yes.
And, so there are other things that, a little bit of clarity also on were the non-player characters, the NPCs. And there are some cool ones like Cowl, everyone's favorite Great Rebellion, like owl/koala hybrid. So when you get those, or maybe even Swiftwing, there's the Swiftwing NPC, that one actually comes with a scenario. Can you use that scenario without the Great Rebellion expansion, or is it to be paired with that?
All right. So in the Kickstarter, you're getting a couple scenarios which will come packaged in your Kickstarter kit as additional ones that you're getting. Any of the ones that utilize the mounts, most of the mount scenarios are generic, like they're generic scenarios in the fact that you can switch the mounts in and out. So if one scenario, like say a very basic one, is just their mounts across the battlefield. If you go and claim them, you get control of them, and then you gain their little bonus effects that they have, as they're not really NPCs, they're mounts. They're a specific category of their own.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, you can have, like, in the Kickstarter, we unlocked Swiftwind, we unlocked Battle Cat on their own, Panther. So, like, let's say you're playing a mount scenario and it has, like, okay, the ones that we've gotten for this one are Battle Cat and Panther. Well, you could have a situation where, like, Beastman has gone up and he's claimed, the Battle Cat mount. So now, you can picture your own little story there. He's enslaved Battle Cat. He's forcing him to, like, be ridden around and everything and gaining the effects there. And now it's up for the heroic warriors to go and save him. Or not. Whatever.
Oh, that's fantastic. Okay. So it looks like there's a lot of other options and ways to play the game. And really, as someone who got to look at the prototype and play with that, I embarrassingly, maybe I as soon as I get the initial, I start making the noises as you're moving around. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this, and playing the base game modes, it really captured that fun. And I just see there's so many ways that you can play this with different scenarios, really capture imagination and do that setup situation where it's like, oh my gosh, Beastman has, captured Battle Cat, or maybe, we got a free Swiftwing from Skeletor. So I'm excited to see like the different ways and spin-offs that you can take things with just like all the number of characters that are provided.
And it's actually one other thing that I'd like to mention there, Chase, as well, is because we did see a lot of comments in the Kickstarter. And I do try to address this in the comments when I can, but they get buried down and everything. People asking for total number of scenarios. And, I've said numerous times in the core box contains at least 10, each of the expansions contain at least 5. And it's very much one of those at least things, because we have made a ton of different scenarios, like a lot. The problem is that finding the ones that are actually good. Because you can coming up with ideas for scenarios is one thing, but making sure they're actually playable and balanced, that's another. And that's one of those things let's say some of our other games and IPs that you looked at.
Make sure they're fun also, right?
Yeah.
Fun, different enough, worth including.
Right. And that's exactly the point. Because you can look at some of our other IPs like Zombicide, that's a sandbox style game where you can make limitless number of scenarios. We've literally released 200 plus different scenarios online and fan made ones over the course of the game's lifespan. That's no different than what is possible here. But when you're talking about the ones in the core box, we want to make sure that they're all well balanced, that they're all playable, and they're all fun. So we start with base our minimal amount, but we intend to fully include as many as we can. It's just we don't know what that high end number is. So, that's one of those things. We can always add more as development goes on, but the second we take away one, that's when people riot.
Right.
So if we went we could probably do 30. And if I said that offhandedly, like I just did, I'm sure now it's gonna be you guys said that you could easily include 30, and you guys only included 25, and this is the worst product I've ever seen in my life. You guys lied to us.
You heard it here, folks. But I just cut that one clip now and we're good with this 30 scenarios coming to Masters of the Universe Clash for Eternia.
Cool, Michael Shinall.
Ding. And and then these are all going to be making use of the scenery as well. And that's another thing that's really caught my eye is the 3D scenery upgrades. That looks fantastic. In particular, I think that nature set with the swamps and stuff, that's so cool. And I'm looking forward to paint up some of these miniatures. And I think that terrain itself are the ones that I'm really excited to paint up and have that cool, that aesthetic.
Yeah, they look really good. I mean, we're a community or not, right? We have a good plastic, but they're very much important to the gameplay. Every scenario uses multiple usually, and they affect gameplay in about the area control aspect of the game, like making sure you're covering the right parts, trying to see ahead where you're going to be. If you're standing on the rock, you get bonuses or on the forest, things like that.
Is there any type of terrain in particular that you feel like you like to play with or have on the board when you're playing?
The lake looks really good.
The lake, yeah.
I like the alternate Stonedar and Rockar forms in the form of the boulders. But I say my favorite are also just the ruins. I mean, yeah, they're the most complex because they've got, borders and walls, but I just really like the ruins. But I'm a huge fan of like 3D terrain and board games in general, so I can gush about that for a long time.
The cool thing about this is like you're really capturing that playset feel. It really does, in the mind's eye, like recall like when you're younger and you see on like TV those commercials for all these cool figures that you're probably not going to have, and those like cool playsets that you're probably not going to have, but now are all within reach. So I think the hardest part now is just being like, I want it all. So I'm excited to see where things go. And I think I predict in the future that I will have a lot of Masters of the Universe minis in my collection. Hopefully the boxes will all fit nicely on my shelves back there. So, well, with that being said, we can start to wrap things up. Thanks so much for coming on here. I'm excited to see how the Kickstarter finishes up and any last minute surprises as we're going into that final week. But I'm sure even after the Kickstarter closes, we'll have lots of cool things to think about and wait for and be ready to explore.
Hopefully so. I hope everyone enjoys this as much as we did making it, really.
And Leo, is this your first game that you've like taken a major designer credit on?
Yes, I have designed a couple other things, but this is my first Kickstarter game, which I designed, participate in the design.
Wow, you're starting off with a powerful game here. So amazing.
Yeah.
Yep. No pressure here. If the game isn't to the quality though, then he's going to have a legion of 30 and 40-year-old men that just absolutely are going to, stake and just pitchfork him to death.
Like, hey, wait a second. Rockon and Stonedar stink. They should have kept them out of the game. Like, who put that in there?
Haters gonna hate, bro. It is what it is.
We have trained him well.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. And best of luck in this final week here and in the rest of the work that you have to come.
Thanks so much. Thanks for inviting us. It was fun. I really hope people enjoy the game.
Yeah, Chase, we'll have to have a post-mortem follow-up on this after the Kickstarter so we can talk about all the stuff that we couldn't talk about.
Yeah. Oh man, the final things. I mean, every day it's exciting getting my little email ding and it's like, hey, like here's the cool thing that's out now. And every time it's like, ooh, there's some unexpected ones in there. So it's been really cool.
And then 1 year after we have delivered the game and see people going like, yes, I'm glad Leo put Recon in the game. Like
absolutely. We'll start an appreciation post at that point.
Yes.
Dear CMON, why are Recon and Roboto so busted?
And if you haven't checked it out, now's your chance. Go on over to Kickstarter.com and check out the CMON Masters of the Universe Clash for Eternia Kickstarter. It's not too late to get your pledges in there. And in the meantime, we hope you get your miniatures on the table.